And obviously, those are all the games for the week for this weekend anyway. But I was watching some talkback basketball, right? And I was kind of thinking, and they have this thing about chasing the ring, and chasing the ring is in basketball terms, and those that don't watch basketball, is just you switching from one team to another to win a championship. So like they got angry at LeBron because he changes teams. They got angry at KD because he's changing teams. They got a little bit angry at AD for switching. Um, Damian Lillard from Portland gets angry that everybody's changing teams. But all of that is because there is this pressure that is put on your career as a basketball player to not be a great that doesn't win a ring. So like I'm a hard out Jazz supporter ever since I seen them for the first time in like I think it was 90 I think it was about 93 or 94. The first time I saw the Jazz and it was on a VHS tape. Dads and uncles, you can explain what that is to kids. And I saw them for the first time from an American family that lived not far from us in Samoa on the same campus. And then I just happened to go to their house. And then he goes, "Hey, you want to come watch some basketball?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll watch some basketball." I didn't even really know what basketball was, really. I knew what the game was. I didn't really know what NBA was. Walked into the house and then I saw the Jazz because he was from Utah. And so I was watching the Jazz and I just saw Karl Malone and John Stockton for the first time. And I thought, holy crap, these guys are mean. And then that's how I became a Jazz fan. Now, Stockton and Malone are greats in the game, but don't have rings. Charles Barkley is a great in the game that doesn't have a ring. Patrick Ewing is a great in the game, doesn't have a ring. Reggie Miller is the same. So all these guys that are greats don't have rings, and that's kind of what they base their legacy on. When it's not that true, it's not that true to say that the rings is the decides how good you actually are, because then you got a guy like Robert Ory who's got 7 rings. He's nowhere near close to being a great. He's got more rings than Michael Jordan, so the argument doesn't really hold up. Even when you have someone like Bill Russell, and you've got what's his name, Casey Jones, I think his name is. All these guys that were with the Boston Celtics, and they won 11 straight, won 13 in his whole career, and they don't consider Bill Russell as the greatest because he's got the most rings. Real failed argument to me. That's how stupid this legacy thing of rings deciding how good you are as the GOAT, because they say that Michael Jordan win all those games and then didn't, went to the final 6 times, didn't lose one. I was like, yeah, but he won 13. Why isn't he the best? Something I don't understand. To their logic, I don't understand that logic. Anyways, I was kind of looking at rugby as sort of the same thing. And is there a chance that we chase the World Cup? Do we chase the cup? The Rugby World Cup moment? Do we chase that moment? Does New Zealand rugby, I guess, have Samoans and Tongans and Fijians play for the All Blacks to chase the cup? And they pretty much did it first before everybody else did, the All Blacks did, right? Having all these bunch of Polynesians, because then that takes them out of consideration for their own countries by doing that same thing. If they play for New Zealand, they can't really play for anyone else. Play for Australia or England or France or whatever, which is going on now. You don't really play for anyone else. So the All Blacks, is that what our thing is? Is not just being, it's not just winning, but we're also chasing the World Cup. Everything is in preparation for the 4 years of the World Cup. Because if that's the case, then does that make the players? Is that on the players? Because for basketball, that's on the players. The players are made out to look real bad because KD is not winning at Oklahoma and he's going, sorry, Russ, I'm going to go. And then he goes to the Warriors and he wins. And that's on him that everyone's going, well, they're hating him. Why doesn't that same hate transition over to the All Blacks when they're making Samoans, Tongans, and Fijians, where they kind of sort of trap them, that they give them a jersey and then they can't really play for anybody else after that? Because now we're having that same argument that guys that have left New Zealand, have been All Blacks, left New Zealand, and now they want to play for Samoa, Tonga, and Fiji, but they can't because the rule says that you can't. But no one looks at New Zealand or at the All Blacks or at the Wallabies or at France or England as chasing the cup, right? And that being like a negative thing. But shouldn't that be a negative thing though? Like, shouldn't that have like a negative, I guess, shouldn't that be a negative thing on the All Blacks that they're just, it's like they're capping guys so they don't play for anybody else, but they're keeping them strong here. And then, because, I mean, let's be honest, that when guys that know that they're not going to be All Blacks for long, after they played for the All Blacks, they go overseas so that it boosts up, being an All Black boosts up their paycheck. You get more on your paycheck if you're an All Black and you go overseas. It's just the way that it is. And so, like, I was kind of thinking about it. It's just like, well, why isn't there like a negative connotation on that? There, like a negative, aura about that. It's just like, well, you guys are just making someone, some of the Fijians, just, you're chasing the cup by sort of trapping them in this black jersey. And then Australia started doing it with Samoans, Tongan, Fijians over there, and then now England and France are doing it. And pretty much everybody is doing that now. And the only ones that leaves out is Samoa, Tongan, Fiji, because then they don't get, I guess, all the other players that are left out when they don't make the squads. And I think for me, like, just being Samoan is that, like, well, that's kind of hard. That kind of sucks, especially if they're not wanted, and then it's just like, well, you just can't play for them anymore because you've already played for somebody else, and they just kind of just sit back, right? Even when they're not wanted, they still can't play for somebody else, and obviously that diminishes the game, and that's something that I've always thought about, and it's kind of like thinking now is just like, well, maybe the All Blacks are just chasing the cup. I mean, does it even have any, I guess, loyalty to the country? Like, has it passed that? Has it passed the loyalty part of it, where it's just like, no, we don't want to win for New Zealand. We're just chasing the cup so we can get another World Cup, not for our country, but just for the brand of the All Blacks, keeping it as the All Blacks. We're just keeping that 87% winning rate or whatever it is, but we're also doing it by chasing the cup by trapping players in that All Black web of you can't really get out once you're in. And everybody else around the country has got their own webs. Because I was kind of looking, I was just like, well, I mean, because obviously money is the factor. For All Blacks, well, I guess it can be both. I mean, for the All Blacks, it'd be like money as well, but also that they're keeping up the brand of who the All Blacks are. And I love the All Blacks. They're my favorite team, more favorite than the Chiefs, Jazz, Chargers all combined. I love the All Blacks among, way above everybody else. But at the same time, that does have this feeling of being unfair, you know. And I know they like to think about it as rugby as a global game, but not really, not yet. Not a fair shot. There's only like 4 or 5 teams that can really win it. They can really win it. Maybe 3 sometimes, depending. And so to me, I just have this feeling that, well, they're not really trying to build the game. They're just wanting the winning ones to win. And I mean, like, and because it's always going to be money, like, and like Lima Sopoanga spoke about it too, where he was saying, um, on that Pacific Brothers, is that with Oscar Kitely, is that he was going, yeah, of course you'd want like 25,000 a game or whatever number he threw out. He goes, I would want that too if I was going to play for the England rugby team. Now, of course, Manu Tuilangi took that, or Billy Wooly Polo took that money, and like all those Islanders that are starting to play for them now as well. I mean, Ricky Flutie was there too. He used to play for England as well, and like why wouldn't you, right? But then that's still not a true indication of where everyone's loyalty lies. That's just the good business decision, is it not? That's just more of a business decision. It's not a loyalty to your country. And I always kind of thought about this too. It's like, well, if everyone got $5,000 a game, regardless of what country or team that you played for, everyone got $5,000 a game, and you could choose to where you want to go, how many of the All Blacks would actually? Well, how many of the players that are in the All Blacks now would actually stay with the All Blacks if your pay packet was the same? Because the way that I think about it is just like, well, I've been a whole bunch of those Samoans and Tongans and Fijians probably wouldn't play for the All Blacks. If you have a Māori team, I don't even think the Māori team will play for the All Blacks. I think the Māori team would just play for the Māoris if there was like a New Zealand Māori team on the side as well. But that's just like a money thing, isn't it? It's a great business decision to do that. It's not a loyalty thing of who you want to be with, because if everything was fair and everyone was getting the same and there was no favoritism and pay or anything like that, I think I think maybe this is just like wishful, hopeful thinking, is that most Samoans would just play for Samoa. Like that Manu Samoa squad will be pretty massive and pretty good. Like I was looking through, and I kind of like looked through all the Super Rugby teams, and this is just Super Rugby Samoan players, and I just looked at it and thought, oh, well, what if all these guys just played for Samoa, like for Manu Samoa? And you have Angus, and these are the names that I got down, right? And I love doing teams. I love just looking at teams and thinking of different scenarios and matchups and all that kind of stuff. So if you have Angus Talval, really, and then you had Asofa Moore, Nepolo Lala, Gerard Kauli Toyoti, Patrick Tuipolotu, Dalton Papali'i, Ari Severe, Akito Ioane, who could be, I guess, play for like the Māoris with him, with his mum being Māori and his dad being Samoan. Akira Ioane, Ere Inari, Josh Ioane, Solomon Alaimalo, uh, Anton Leonard Brown, Rico Ioane, Caleb Clark, and then I looked at like, well, still got like guys like Mark Talea, and then Etienne Nanai. You still got Jackson, uh, Garden Bishop, Seal Tompkinson, the Umanga Jensen twins with Thomas, and if you had Thomas and then Peter, and then you still got Alex Fido, and then Danny Tuala and Chase, Tia, you still got Ben Lamb and Vince Ussel. You still got all these kind of guys right now. I was kind of like looking at all these. I was like, well, that's a massive list, because you still got Ezekiel Lundermuth. You still got Michael Alalator, Naito Akoi, Duplessis Karifi, Marino Mikaele Tu'u. Then you still got Daniel Leonard Brown, Josh Josefa Scott. And then I was like looking, I was like, whoa. Then I just looked at Australia, I thought, well, you still got Scott Seal over there. You still got Hunter, that kid, what's his name? Paisami, Hunter Paisami over there. Jordan Pitaya, I think his name is. And I was just looking at all these guys, and even Alan Alalator, like Michael's brother. But I was looking at all these guys, right? And I was thinking, well, those names all together, I was thinking, well, yeah, of course we'd be able to beat every other team. I don't know how much of that would be. Would that even be an argument then of who would be the best? Because then you could look at the Tongan team and go, flip. You get all these Tongan guys in the team, then you're looking at a really stacked Tongan side as well. Even Fijians. You're going to have a stacked Fijian side. And obviously that's just an if and a scenario and just a hypothetical if everything was fair. Obviously it's not, because England's going to get a bunch of money, All Blacks are going to get a bunch of money, and they're all going to be way more funded and taken care of than the Samoan, Tongans, and Fijians players who pay their own way to get to where they want to go, and then they don't actually know if that money's coming back. When they say, "Oh no, we'll reimburse you," it's like, yeah, that means that they're not giving you any money back. That's like your parents, your islander parents, going, "Oh, just give me the $5. I'll give it to you later." Yeah, it's not coming back, buddy. And it's sad, but then that's them chasing the cup. But it's not seen as a negative, like a basketball player changing teams to win a ring, so he doesn't end up having to defend himself that he didn't win a ring when he retired. Chris Paul's going to have to do that. Dwayne Wade's lucky he won rings. Melo's going to have to do that. Carmelo's one of my favorite players of all time. Lucky Jason Kidd, who's my favorite player of all time, won a ring, because then he would have to start talking about justifying his. Gary Payton didn't win a ring. Oh wait, no, he did when he joined the Heat with Shaq and them. But there's a lot of guys that have to justify their legacy as a basketball player, but they gotta have to say I got no ring. But then people look and say, well, if you don't have a ring, then you're kind of nothing. I was like, no, really. But is that the same thing with rugby players? If you end your career and you don't have a World Cup under you, does that make you? Does that like does that dim your career as a great? I guess. I mean, Michael Hooper's probably one of those guys, right? Is it Hooper or Cooper? No. Hooper. Open side for Australia. I mean, he hasn't won a World Cup. He didn't win a World Cup, right? Or still hasn't. But is he going to end up like one of those guys that didn't? That didn't win one? Look at some of the South Africans that went through and then didn't win one. John Smith won one, I think. But then, they'll just not judge the same. And I was kind of thinking, well, maybe that's I know, what do you call that? What do you call that in rugby terms? Because there's got to be something for it, right? It's got to be something, and it's not going to be against the players, but then the players also have to make that decision too. But then it doesn't become a loyalty decision, it becomes a business decision. Just the same thing with, I guess Kalen Ponga is one of the better examples of like, well, yeah, of course he's a Kiwi. And he considers himself a Māori, but he considers himself an Australian when he plays NRL and has to pick a jersey because they get paid more, and he gets paid more when he goes and plays Origin. I mean, James Tamo did that. I guess was one of the first players. I guess one of the first players to do it, being an openly like Kiwi guy, and then he goes and picks Australia, and it is purely just on money. Like, that's a business decision, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't make those business decisions, but then it does actually, to me, it kind of just demeans the jersey and that you're actually playing for, especially when they talk about the jersey. Yeah, I love this jersey. It's like, well, do you? Because if this money thing wasn't around, are you going to be picking that jersey or not? And I've always had sort of a problem with that, especially in the league where, I don't know, like some of the guys are just like, well, bro, you're not even Australian. I think Benji Marshall was kind of like that too, where he's just like, well, no, I'm not Australian. Like, easily, Sonny Bill Williams could have done that too. He's just, when he's been there since he was 16, 17, and then, played for New South Wales and what is it called? The younger grades that they have, the SG ball and stuff like that. But then he's just like, no, I'm a Kiwi. He's like, I'm Kiwi Samoan. I'm not even Australian at all. But it becomes a business decision, and then I think you just have to go, well, as a business and loyalty, because then that also means that, well, then you're just chasing something, and it's not, if you're chasing the ring, you're not chasing to win for that team. You're just chasing for, I guess, for the financial security that it's going to bring you. Because if they said to you, well, once you have All Blacks on your rugby resume, then that gives you an extra 20,000 a year or 40,000 a year. I don't know what the exact number is, but then it must say something. I mean, Springboks are probably the same thing that they have to deal with too, but they have to deal with it from the lower levels where they're getting French teams coming in and taking their schoolboys. Now, it's not that hard taking a school. It's not that easy to take a schoolboy, a really top schoolboy, especially from New Zealand. In South Africa, they're struggling with that now, and it's getting worse. But they have different problems over there that are way different from ours. But it's the same thing that's going on there, is that they're just making business decisions. They're not making loyalty decisions. And that's where I kind of like tell kids as well, that people out there is just like, there's no loyalty in sports. Don't think that there is. If you're still thinking there's a lot of loyalty in sports, then you're going to get done over. There's no loyalty in sports at all. Doesn't matter who gave you your first start, who gave you your first opportunity. Your time is going to run out when it's no longer loyalty and it becomes a business. So you just take care of yourself. If you want to leave a team, just leave a team. Make it that kind of thing. That's where I'm kind of thinking about it now. Is just like, well, if you're chasing the cup and you're leaving it up to the players, but you're sort of diverting them from what they really want to do by showing them some money, then they're going to choose the business decision, which is the All Blacks' decision to chase a cup. But it's not a bad thing in rugby. Because all it's really talked about is kind of like, well, you guys are taking players that are not even born there, or they're not even raised there, or they're not even, some of them can't even speak English sometimes. Like Malachi Fekitoa, his English was kind of terrible coming out of Wesley. And because he was from Tonga. Repeating couldn't even speak English for ages. He even said it in his documentary. He's like, I couldn't even speak English. He's just like, yep, 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 yep. All Islanders are, yeah, 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 yeah. All Islanders do that. They can't speak English and they play rugby. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's like, oh, bro, he doesn't even know what you're talking about. So I was like, that kind of thing is that, well, now you're put them in a position where you're going, okay, I'm going to pay you this much, you get this much. And then they make the decision, but it's based off something that they're going to get. But then the rugby unions aren't looked at as that kind of thing where you're just chasing to win the World Cup. Because obviously right now the Bledisloe doesn't mean anything right now, because we're just dominating Australia in that position where they, sometimes I don't even think they want to mention the Bledisloe Cup as a motivation, because that motivation thing is gone. But at the same time, it's just like, we're not chasing a percentage on our wins. We're chasing the success and the strength of the brand of the All Blacks by winning championships. And our championships is a cup. And so to me, we are chasing cups. But it's not looked at as a negative thing. And I think, why? Why not? Especially when you're taking players away from the teams that they probably would want to play for rather than play for the All Blacks. I kind of see that as different then. Or are those two things the same conversation, or are they different conversations? And this is me just asking. I don't know. I'm just thinking out aloud here to you guys and seeing what that is. Because obviously, the guys that I just named, and I have, how many players? I only have 33 players Oh, no, take those out. 32 players that are just here in New Zealand playing Super Rugby, not Mitre 10, just Super Rugby. But I didn't count the Australians. I didn't count the All Blacks and the New Zealanders and the Samoans and Tongans that have left. I didn't even count all the Samoans and Tongans that, and I didn't even count all the Samoans that come out of. I mean, my mate Brian's over in France playing for Toulon or Toulouse, one of those two. And he just had himself a little bubbers, but he's been over there. That 6'8" monster he is, Brian. But he'll be another guy too that is just like, yeah, well, why wouldn't he? I mean, my mate Hamir is over in Italy and made under 20s New Zealand's 2 years in a row. I think captain both years or captain the last year, and he's over in Italy. He would have probably been put in that same situation as well. I'm not speaking like for him. I'm just saying that in terms of a decision, it was just like, well, how would you choose that? Because I know he's a proud Tongan as well. So is Brian. Brian's a proud Samoan guy, but then he has to choose. I think it comes down to the monetary thing. I know Brian was brought up Samoan, and so like you kind of think about all these other guys as well. It's just like, well, in the heart of hearts, what do they really relate to? What is their identity? Is the identity that of the Samoan lives in New Zealand, or is his identity is that he's a Kiwi, which is all of us? Maoris probably have the same kind of argument. It's just like, no, I'm a Maori that lives here in Aotearoa. Or I'm a Tongan raised in New Zealand. Not I'm a Kiwi. I'm Samoan, but I'm Kiwi as well. I mean, I always consider myself Samoan, even though I was born and raised here. I only spent 4 years in Samoa, but I still consider myself Samoan in New Zealand. That's how I explain it. And even if the question is posed to me of like who you would play for, even I have like said, I don't know. All Blacks have always been my love, but I'm still proud to be Samoan. But if money was the same, I was just like, well, then that takes it away. Do I play for the team that I love the most, or do I play for the country that I love the most? If you've been to Samoa, it's pretty bloody fantastic. It's kind of what you think about. But that's just my thoughts anyway. I just thought that was an interesting crossover, and just the way that I was thinking, the way that it is, I guess, stated, and the way that we see things as well, is what is classed as something that is then negative, and then who is the negativity placed on, the players or the teams or the organizations? Because there is something negative, and I know that they've tried, or they say that they've tried, but I know that there has been meetings, whatever meetings you're talking about Samoans and Tongans have actually being able to, Samoans, Tongan, Fijian actually being able to go back to their country, that their blood country, I guess, what they identify as, or who they identify themselves as culturally. But then it's just not passed, and everyone likes to point the other finger of who's not doing this. But I mean, that's why Hale Tupoli and Seilala Mapuso and some of those guys. Who's the other one? There's somebody else. But I mean, that's why they started up that this Pacific. Let me get it right. Pacific Wellness. Fighting for Pacific Islanders. Yeah, the Pacific Rugby Players Welfare. And I guess Eliota Saipolo is like, he's like the one that fights for it as well. Fights for the rights of Polynesian Samoans and Polynesians and stuff like that. And he'll be a great guy to have in there too. I mean, but I think we just got to do better. Like, there's got to be something that fixes this. There's got to be some kind of end to all of this. And I mean, I'd like to think that money's not going to be a factor, but it's going to be a factor 100%. But then what leniencies are you going to give us? Or like give someone talking to Fijian players. Like, what's the leniencies going to be? things like that. Anyways, that's my little rant and ramble, thinking out loud. But this is high school top 200. Get down and oh no, I can't really tell you to go to see the games. Well, live stream it however you can, and yeah. Keep it out, and then Monday morning meeting, I'll be back with another podcast, letting you know how the weekend went, my thoughts and stuff on all the wins and rankings and stuff like that. But that's me, Herschel Fruin, top 200. Peace.